We'll start the recording. Hey everyone. Hi. Today, I'm gonna have a great chat with Alexey here. Alexey is a lead data scientist from OLX Group. Funnily enough, I was at the OLX Prod Tech conference last year, and Alexey gave a great presentation on deduplicating images. However, I didn't know this until I just asked him and confirmed about this about 2 minutes ago. But Alexey, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, hi. Thanks for having me here. Yes, I work as a lead data scientist at OLX, and what I do as a lead includes too many things to talk about. Mainly, it's about overseeing anything related, everything related with machine learning, trying to help where help is needed, trying to stay on top of everything and connect people. Like, let's say if somebody wants to develop something like a new model, I can help them and find out maybe somebody else already attempted to do this. I also work a lot with infrastructural things, like making sure that once we have a model, we can actually deploy it and serve it on real users. And yeah, so this is the kind of work I'm doing. Also, I'm doing a lot of mentoring other people, so junior people, somebody who is not a data scientist, let's say an analyst or an engineer who wants to get into machine learning. I'm doing that at work, trying to help them to come up with the model, to train the models, and then deploy these models.
That's great. So actually, we have a couple of questions about that mentoring. But first, I'm very interested to ask you about your career. So you graduated with a degree in IT, information technology in 2010, and you were a software engineer, mostly focused on Java, for several years. Then in 2013, you underwent a master's degree in BI. Why did you do it? What was your thinking behind it? Why switch from software engineering to data? What did you see in 2013? And I'm hoping that whatever you share will be useful for people who also thinking the same way. Hey, Alexey made this jump from software engineering. Did he regret it, or what led to that decision?
Yeah, funny that you asked what did you see, because I actually saw a video. It was a video course by Andrew Ng. This it's probably like everyone is saying that. Yeah, so for me it was also the case. So I saw that course and I thought, okay, this is what I want to do. And basically that led me to first taking more courses, also on Coursera, then chatting with a couple of companies who were looking for data scientists, and everyone was saying, telling me that I don't have enough education, I don't have enough background. And then this is how I decided that I need to get a master's. And yeah, so back then I didn't know that BI is not really data science. So these are different things. But still, I had a couple of courses in machine learning, and the BI component was also helpful in my career. But this is how I got there. So basically, watching the course and then realizing that companies want more solid background. And then, yeah, I thought doing masters was a good idea.
So let me ask you this. Do you know of other people from software engineering who've made the switch but didn't quite like it? Or
Oh, that's an interesting question. I know quite a few people who did make the switch and who ended up enjoying the work. But yeah, like if you think about the work of a data scientist, it's many things, right? And like if you ask me if I like the job, if I like working as a data scientist, I'll tell you yes, I do. But actually, not all the aspects of this. And some of the aspects, let's say for me, what I find really boring is parameter selection, this like tuning models, and then like especially with deep learning models, when you change something, you execute the script and you watch all these charts in TensorBoard, and then half an hour later you see that it doesn't converge, and then you keep on doing this. I find it pretty boring, so I don't like that aspect. And maybe many other software engineers also don't like this. But what I do like is actually all the engineering things about around data science, like, okay, you have a model, what to do next, or like how to prepare the data set, like all this data cleaning, building data pipelines, and then building the web services, and also like in like all the infrastructural things like Docker, Kubernetes. And interestingly, that many data scientists don't actually like this job. They like training models, and this is funny because then it's like they do this part, they do that part, and everyone is happy.
Actually, you mentioned a great point. Maybe data science is just so broad that there's just something for everyone. Statisticians like the math, etc., and engineers like yourself, like the infra. Um, so let me ask you this question. For people who are trying to emulate your journey from software engineering into data science, how should they do it today? Do you recommend that they take on a master's like you did? If not, what should they do?
Yeah, so I think the path I took wasn't the most optimal path for
Mhm.
transitioning. So I actually spent like 2 years doing this master's, and I think I could have done this in like 6 months probably. But just watching courses and um, doing projects, and then basically trying to find a job. Back then, it wasn't really easy to um, to find a job without proper education, because back then the field was still new and people didn't really know who to hire, what kind of background these people should have. Uh, Now it's easier, so people kind of know more or less, like at least more than previously, what they want to see in data scientists. And it's definitely not a PhD. I mean, definitely it's not a requirement. It's not a must-have. So it's a nice to have thing, but like it's not like a showstopper if somebody doesn't have a PhD. But back then it wasn't like it was a problem if people didn't have like proper education. So yeah, I wouldn't advise doing masters. So I think in Europe you spend 2 years doing that. Not all the courses are actually needed at the end. Like I did study useful things, but yeah, not all of them turned out to be super useful for.
So let me ask you this, Alexei. You hire people yourself. If someone doesn't have a master's or a PhD, would you hire them?
Of course, yeah. So I
Of
don't think
course.
this is yeah. So I know that people can acquire useful skills from masters and from PhD, but I don't think this is the only way of getting these skills. And there are many other ways of doing this.
There you have it, everyone. I mean, a lead data scientist, hiring manager himself is saying that it's not necessary to take a master's. If any recruiters turn you down, you can just show them this video. So next step. After you did a master's from 2013 2015, and then you were a research assistant for a while. And correct me if any of this is wrong. I looked at it on your LinkedIn. Then in October 2015, you secured a role as a data scientist at Search Metrics, focused on SEO text mining. How did you do that? What did you have to demonstrate to the hiring manager and the team? And you know, for people who are trying to make the first step in the role, how should they think about it? What should they demonstrate?
Yeah, so I now remember that interview. That was a long interview. It was just one interview. Usually now these days you have a round of interview, like a series of interviews, like 4 or 5. But it was just one interview, 2.5 hours long. That was pretty tough. And I remember that most of the time we talked about my thesis. And yeah, so what I take away from that is it's nice to have a project that you can talk about. It doesn't have to be a thesis, right? So you don't really have to do a master's to do that. But it was a real life project. It was a real application of machine learning to something. So for me, it was this area. It's called math information retrieval. So it's basically trying to work with formulas on Wikipedia, and then, like, let's say you have an expression E equals mc squared, and then you want to know that, let's say, E stands for energy. So So this is what I was doing in my thesis. And then most of the time we talked about this project. And I think it's important when you go to an interview to have a project to talk about, especially if you don't have a lot of experience. Let's say this is the first full-time job you're interviewing for. It's good to have something to talk about during the interview. It can be your course project, it can be a master thesis, it can be a side project, it can be pretty much everything. Let's say it could be a Kaggle competition, for example, as well. As long as you have something to talk about, that's already a big plus. And if you don't, then it's like, okay, what do we talk about? Let's talk about theory, right? But if there's something to talk about, like a project, it makes the conversation a lot nicer. So I think and if we go back to the original question, I think one other thing that think the hiring manager was interested in was my Java experience. And the company had a lot of services written in Java, and they needed somebody who can help integrate machine learning into these Java services. And yeah, I think these two parts, so being able to, well, like knowing Java and also having this project, I think these two things really helped me.
That's a great experience. I think I had a similar experience when I actually just went for a very similar 3-hour long interview that included lunch, where they were just interested in about product categorization that I did in Kaggle. It was also because that same e-commerce startup had a problem with product categorization, and it needed someone to fix it. And eventually, I got hired. But you know, these are very unusual experiences, and I think that I just got lucky. So I'm just gonna ask you, Alexey, how did you fail in your first application? What were some interviews that failed, and how did you adjust based on the feedback?
Okay,
Or maybe you're the one hit,
yeah.
hole in one.
Sorry, I'm going to disappoint you. So basically, after graduating, I had one interview, and I got an offer after that
Wow.
interview.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Alexey is the Java data science rock star.
Yeah, but
So
maybe
yeah.
that was a mistake actually. So maybe I shouldn't have stopped at one interview. I should have interviewed with more companies. I am very happy with what I did at Searchmetrics. I think that was a really great job. I really enjoyed and I learned a lot at Searchmetrics, and I met a lot of nice people, somebody I still in touch with. But now I think, looking back, it's always good to have multiple opportunities to choose from, and that maybe not for Searchmetrics. Searchmetrics was a great company, but maybe in some other instances, like it's good. Okay, you have an offer, but maybe don't stop and try to try to interview at other places. Maybe there is something better out there, but you don't know that if you don't try it, right?
That's true. That's a good point. So then, from 2015 to 2018, you had two stints as a data scientist, first at Searchmetrics, then at Simplex. Then at the end of 2018, you joined OLX as a senior data scientist, and now you're a lead data scientist. So for someone who's had a couple of years of experience, both as a data scientist and an engineer, what does it mean to be a senior? So I know a couple of people who suddenly get the title of senior and suddenly that, why do I have this senior title? And what should I advice would you give them?
Yeah. So first of all, maybe let's talk a bit about the title itself, like senior. What does it actually mean?
Yes, please.
And I think if you ask, like if you talk to people from different companies, maybe the answers, all the answers will be different. But I think there is one common part in all the answers. I think a senior is somebody who can take end-to-end responsibility. And here, like I think the important word is not end-to-end, but responsibility. Like somebody, like if you want to do something and somebody asks you to do something, that person will find a way to do this. Like even if it's a complex project, if there are obstacles along the way, somebody will find a way to solve, to overcome all these obstacles, to find the right people, to remove all the blockers. And instead of just sitting there, okay, I have this blocker, what do I do? They just go and find the solution. I think this is the most important quality for a senior, in my opinion. And then if we talk about data science, so senior data scientist is somebody who can do a project end to end, like starting from talking to stakeholders, figuring out if machine learning is actually the right tool, or how to actually translate the requirements into the language of machine learning, then analyzing if this problem is actually worth solving. And it's not, of course, it's not just a rock star who can do that, like everything, like all the communication. Of course, they work with other people, like with product managers, with stakeholders, but they need to be able to assess the situation, understand, okay, do I really, should we really spend time working on this problem? Should we really use machine learning for that? Or maybe something simpler will be fine. And then, of course, like after that, they also identify what kind of data is needed, work with data engineers, or maybe they do it themselves, like building all these data pipelines to make sure that all the data you need to have a model is there. And then, of course, training the model itself, and then serving this model. And if somebody can do all these things, I think like it's 100% certain that they can call themselves senior data scientists. But I think the important part here is the first part at the beginning. A middle data scientist, like a middle level professional, will be able also to, let's say, train a model or work with data engineer on data pipelines. But the communication aspect, I think, here is important. And yeah, so this is what a senior means to me. And when I worked at Simplex, even though we didn't have any titles there, I just had to do so many different things. And I think that really helped me uh, to get hired as a senior data scientist later at a company where they did have grades. Just being exposed to so many different things, working close to product people, working close to data engineers, to software engineers, to the marketing department and sales, and understanding what they want. And then also building the thing from scratch, like we had a data platform that we needed. It wasn't there. We needed to build it from scratch, and then I was leading that effort. That really helped me to be hired as a senior data scientist afterwards.
So let me try to summarize what I think you said. So you said a senior data scientist is someone that you can trust. You have a problem, you give it to them, they'll be independent, they can run with it.
Exactly.
And how are they able to run with it? They need to have the whole end-to-end understanding. They may not be able to do everything themselves, but they can get other people to help them. But the start is very important, the communication, and not just doing things the right way, but even the decision, should we even do this? Understanding that's what make a senior data scientist.
Exactly.
Anything that I miss out?
No, yeah, maybe what I missed out was also, you have a big, I don't know, unclear bunch of requirements. Somebody just dropped on you, and then, hey, I have this problem. Do your magic and solve this. And then you do your magic and then translate this big,
uh,
ambiguous bunch of requirements into smaller tasks, something that you can give to other people, let's say to junior data scientists. Okay, you need to do this piece of work, and basically translating these requirements into manageable pieces. I think this is also um, an important aspect of work, and also engaging with these junior data scientists or middle data scientists as well. Some people would actually call this position elite data scientist already, because this is a lot, like it sounds like a lot of things to do, right? So like delegating, then translating the requirements. And I think for me, the main distinction here is like a senior is involved mostly in one project, and they uh, are making all the decisions in one project. But for elite, it can be uh, multiple projects and less hands-on involvement. So a
I
senior is
think that's
still, yeah, a senior engineer or senior developer is still very hands-on. So it's more than 50% of the time, or maybe 70% of the time, they're still coding, they're still solving very complex problems. But for elite, it's less typically. It's more like more communication, more delegation, these kind of things.
that's a great example. So I'm going to go divert a bit. You mentioned that at Simplex, the team was very small. You had to do everything. So for people out there who are thinking, hey, for my data science role, should I go to a startup, a smaller company, or a big company, Simplex or OLX? And there's going to be pros and cons in each. What is your experience on what was good and what was good in each of them? I mean, for me, I've always been in a startup, and now I'm in Amazon as well. So I also see this, and people always ask me the same question, and I just want them to hear from Alexey.
Yeah, so I think what I really liked at the startup is exposure to pretty much everything. So I could do everything I wanted. There were no boundaries, and there was a lot more work than I could possibly do, and everyone in the company could possibly do. And then we really needed to think carefully, what do we do next? Like, how does it affect our product? How does it help our customers? Um, and when our data science team was just 3 people, when we just have 3 people, we really have to think carefully what we do next. Um, that has the largest, the biggest impact on the product, on the customer. Yeah, that was pretty nice experience. And then, of course, we didn't have anything. We needed to create all these things from scratch. And then how do we actually do this in a way that it doesn't fall apart, yet uh, yet we can move fast, right? So like we needed to make many trade-offs, like to make many decisions and decide, okay, here I want to move faster, but here I need to be more careful and maybe spend more time uh, to kind of connect these things together so they don't fall apart. So that was a nice experience, and I think it's also possible to have such experience in a corporation, in a bigger company. But again, in a bigger company, there are more people, and then also, yeah, you don't always have so much freedom uh, at the startup to be able to make all these decisions, to decide what you want to work on, to make all the technical decisions, especially if it's like a greenfield project. At a corporation, you already have things that you have to use, so you have some limits, and at a startup, of course, you have limits. Usually, it's time and money, and then it also forces you like to be creative, and that's great. At a corporation, there are of course different like it's different setup. What I liked about corporations, like bigger companies, is there's always somebody who can teach you how to do these things. At a startup, you're basically on your own. Uh, so the best thing you have is maybe somebody from another company, maybe a friend or somebody you met at a conference. Then you can ask some things and then yeah, try to implement this. But yeah, it's usually difficult. You learn by making mistakes and learning from these mistakes. These are very good lessons, and they, like, to me, like it's the best way to learn. But usually these mistakes, like making these mistakes, takes time, right? Sometimes you can just, okay, somebody already made these mistakes and can just tell you, okay, this is how you should do this, and this is how we did this in a similar project. So I think when it comes to uh, more experienced colleagues and also processes, perhaps, like this is where corporations are, in my experience, better. Like processes, colleagues, and also more resources. Like basically, of course, there are limits, but at the startup, you have to be oftentimes a lot more creative with the budget constraints. And when I look back at my career, I also noticed these patterns. Like I worked at a smaller company, then bigger company, then a smaller company. So somehow jumping between these two. And I think this is a good experience to somehow learn from both worlds and see where is actually better. And yeah, so what I would suggest to people who are just starting, um, like if let's say they have 2 offers and they don't know where to go, I would suggest actually going with a startup because I think it's more likely that at a startup you'll have a broader experience, like you'll be exposed to many different things. Not just, okay, like you have to squeeze 1 extra% out of this model, but you'll have to talk to sales, you have to talk to engineers, you have to talk to product people, you have to I don't know, like buy groceries. This is what I did at Simplex, for example. Because there was
Yeah.
nobody, there was no office management to go and buy groceries, right? So everyone in the company could just go there, buy whatever they wanted, and then submit the receipt and get the money back. And it was cool. I just could go buy whatever I wanted. And yeah, so at a big company, you don't have this freedom.
Yeah, people are gonna listen to this and they're just say, Alexey said startup. So I'm gonna I like the startup life as well, but I just want to add a bit of balance. I think at a bigger company, I think you can work at scale. I mean, OLX is in, I don't know, what, 40, 45 marketplaces. You in small companies, you get to iterate very fast. You get to learn a lot. In big companies like maybe OLX, you get to learn about all the various cultural differences, all the various regulation differences, and you learn how to work at scale.
Mhm,
So pros and cons, and I think that for people very young in a career, there's just no way you can make a mistake.
mhm.
Everything is just a great learning experience.
Yes.
So next question. You have close to 10 years of experience, first as software engineer, then as data scientist, and you work with many, many people. Think of about the most effective people that you work with, the most effective data scientists, or people you really respect. What is it that makes them effective? What is it about their behaviors or the results they achieve or something else? What is your definition of effective?
Well, effective is somebody who gets the job done in a reasonable amount of time. And I think it's somebody who is also pragmatic to some extent, like not a perfectionist. And I remember my team lead at Searchmetrics, so the first company where I worked as a data scientist. So I learned a lot from him. He was really effective. So he could just come up with a problem and then just dig deep, focus really on solving this problem. And after a couple of days, come up with, hey, this is what I did. That was really great. And I often found myself thinking, hey, I really want to be like him, like to be able to quickly come up with an idea and develop it. So that was cool. Yeah, but speaking about efficiency, yeah, also being able to focus. I think this is an important thing. And yeah, I really admire it. Like as a team lead, I know that it's very difficult to focus when there are so many, like you have to manage people at the same time. Like how do you focus if you spend all the day in meetings? And that's very difficult. Now I know that I admire his work even more now than previously, because I know that it's very difficult to find time where you can just sit and do the thing. So that's
I think that makes sense. And let me ask you this. So he was super effective. He had a problem. He could dig deep and in a few days have a solution in design. What is it that he did that helped him get there? Did he study a lot? Did he have a lot of experience? Did he fail a lot? What were some of the habits that we can learn from him or
uh,
from yourself?
yeah. I think for this particular person, he had a startup before that, and probably this is where he learned all these things. Um, yeah.
And yourself, what advice would you give for people to become a more effective data scientist?
I think what helps is focusing on the problem. So especially when it comes to data science, what we often think first is the solution. Okay, like I have this problem and I'm going to hit it with this hammer of machine learning that I have, and probably like especially you'll start with deep learning, because why not, right? Like you have this latest TensorFlow, Keras, whatever model, this big exception model that yeah, but maybe take a step back and think, okay, but do we really need to solve this with the fanciest model out there? Maybe there is a simple solution, and then just focus on solving the problem, not on how you solve it. And usually, the simplest way to solve is the right way to do it.
And what else have you seen in people with that are effective? What habits do they have, or what learning do they do on the side? For example, are they taking courses, reading papers, or just doing personal projects? Or for yourself, what do you think is helpful?
Yeah, probably. all of the above, like they're doing all. And I also do that. I think that what is good is to have the right balance between this. Like taking courses is great. There are so many courses now, but don't just do courses. You need to also do hands-on stuff, and not just just following the tutorial and then thinking, okay, now I can do everything. Usually this is not true. Like you have this, I at least like after watching a tutorial, following the tutorial through, and then after having a project, I sometimes feel that, okay, now the sky is the limit, I can do everything. But when I start doing a project myself, then I find out that, yeah, actually, I don't really know that topic well.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then I need to do like a lot of Googling, a lot of research. And I think this is what helps. Like after doing a course, um, do a project. Or can we do a project first and then do a course? Or maybe just don't do courses, just do projects, whatever works for you. But don't forget to do projects. Just watching courses will not cut it.
And I just want to add to that. I think Alexey mentioned a great point in the sense that after you do a course, you try to do it yourself hands-on, you're gonna realize there's 1,001 things you don't know. The same thing happens when you're writing. If you think you know about something and you write about it to share with other people, when you write, your mind is a blank. You realize, oh, I need this piece of information, I need that piece of information. So projects and writing are a great way for you to consolidate your knowledge and to find your gaps.
Yeah, indeed, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, Alexei does a lot of writing, which we will talk about in a bit. So, of the many data scientists that you work with, what are the challenges that most people trip on? What is the biggest mistake, biggest hindsight, biggest thing that they cannot see? What does most people miss out on?
Yeah, I don't know, but like maybe if I can rephrase the question a bit, maybe if we talk about like what are the problems that data scientists usually have, like something that we don't have in advance enough, maybe like before starting the project, is I think we don't, at least myself and people I work with, often underestimate the amount of time it will take to actually deploy the thing. And
Underestimating the deployment. Okay.
yes, and that includes not just the deployment itself, but also preparing the data pipelines and all these things. I think that's number one thing, or maybe it's actually number two thing, because there is also again, you have to make sure that you're solving the right problem, like what you're doing actually matters. And if you spend half a year on like developing this great model that nobody cares about, like you just wasted half a year. Yeah, that's also something important to realize, that yeah, ask yourself, why do we actually solve this? What kind of problem we're trying to solve with this solution? And who is this user for this? How this user is going to use this thing? Like, are they going to use it the way we imagined, or they will do it like differently? And I think having this conversation with the user is important, especially at your earlier stages of a project. And I saw that often we don't do that enough.
I think that's great advice. I think always work backwards from the customer or from the internal user, right? And you can save yourself 6 months of effort before
Exactly.
going down there. So now, Alexei, yourself as someone who interviews and hires people, how do you think about it? When you interview someone, what is it that makes you say, we cannot hire this person? And conversely, when you interview someone, what is it that makes you say, we must hire this person? No matter what anyone says, I want to hire this person.
Okay. Well, usually when I interview, I ask a simple Python quiz. Like, it's not really a quiz, it's just a simple problem that, yeah, and if a person has Python in their CV but cannot solve it, then for me it's a no-go. And this problem is like, it just requires one loop and an if statement inside. So it does require a bit of thinking. but most people solve it in 3-5 minutes. Sometimes because interview like is a difficult process, not easy for some people. It's okay if somebody spends like 25 minutes on like it's stressful. I understand that. So for me, it's totally fine. But if at the end they can solve this problem and they basically show that they know Python, that it's fine. But yeah, if they start, okay, I usually Google how to do for loops in Python, then for me it's very suspicious.
Yeah.
Then, like, why do you put Python then in your CV if you need to Google how to do a for loop? Then for me, for me, this is like a big red flag, and usually after that we do not continue. But that's the only thing that comes to mind. So usually, like a simple coding task, it's very similar to FizzBuzz. Maybe you know FizzBuzz. It's very similar to that. It's basically maybe you heard about run length encoder. This is like you have a sequence of characters and you need to encode it with a certain algorithm.
I see.
It's relatively simple. So you just, let's say you have 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, and then you see, okay, 1 appears 4 times, 2 appears 2 times, and 3 appears 1 time. And then you have, let's say, after that you have 1, 1. You see that 1, 1 appears 2 times again. So you
I
basically need
see.
to do some sort of
Ah,
like group by in a way, like a stream in group by. But it requires just a for loop and then checking what is the previous character, what is the next character, and then a counter.
and it also requires understanding Alexey's requirements. The
Yes.
person can just use a counter dig, right? And
Yes.
just put every. Um, so if I can summarize, for Alexey, the red flag is if you say you know something, but you actually really don't know it. Maybe it looks odd on your integrity. And the question you mentioned is really just, it's really, really the most basic Python I can think of, and a very minimum technical bar. So what else makes you feel that it's not safe to hire this person, or maybe we can talk
Yeah,
about.
that's probably the only thing that comes to mind right now. Sometimes I see on people's CV, they mention things like set and awk, these Python tools, and I really wonder, like, okay, but do they really know that? Because for me, this is like mind blown. Every time I need to do something with awk or set in Linux, these simple utilities
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
yeah, but I don't, I don't dare ask him that because it's like I don't understand these
You
things.
don't enough. Yeah.
Yeah, but to me it looks suspicious. Like, how can somebody claim they know these things because they are so difficult? But yeah, apart from this Python thing, yeah, there are no other like showstoppers.
Yep.
Of course, there are some behavioral things, but usually, yeah, this is something like individual for a person, not like something I see as a common pattern. But this thing with Python, I think it appears quite often. So it basically just says that people claim they can program, but they actually cannot.
Yep.
On the other side, like something that stands out, I think having projects stands out, and then having end-to-end responsibility. Also, I think this is like a really great thing, like somebody who delivered the project end to end, and then can talk about all the trade-offs that they needed to, like all these decisions they needed to make along the way, and can also answer why this project started. This is not everyone can do that. I understand that not everyone works on that level to be able to answer. So maybe some people are less senior. They just, somebody like a senior data scientist comes and says, hey, do that part. But I think it's good to actually ask, but why are we doing that? And then know that. And when somebody asks you on the interview, but hey, but why did you actually solve this problem? And be able to answer that. I think this is good.
I think I understand. I think Alexey is trying to only interview senior data scientists. Everything he mentioned is end-to-end responsibility, all the trade-offs, why the project started. That's something that a senior needs to bring in to the team and to share with the team.
Yes,
So
especially yeah, if we are looking for a senior, and somebody who claims to be a senior doesn't show that, then maybe, yeah, maybe we will have questions like, is this person ready to be hired as a senior or not?
Yep. So for now, let's talk a bit about being a senior data scientist. For data scientists with more experience, they get to a point where they have two options. They can continue focus building products and systems and maybe mentor juniors on the smaller components of the system, or then they can take on more projects and more people management, engaging stakeholders, building a team. How do you think about these two different paths? And what's your advice to think about? I mean, some people think of it as a IC, senior IC, principal IC. Some people think of it as a manager, senior manager role. Um, which what's your thoughts about it? How should people think about it? How do you think about it? Yeah.
Yeah, so I haven't been like, I'm an individual contributor, so my role is as a lead data scientist. I'm not a people manager. I'm like in some companies it's called staff, in some companies it's called principal. So for OLX it's called lead. So I'm on the expert track, and I have not been a manager to actually answer that question, but think like for this expert track, what what I see is for me personally, so like it's exposure to many projects, but with less hands-on, and I like that. I like to sort of guide people, or maybe to lead people, because I'm a lead data scientist. Actually, okay, like you should watch out for this thing, or like make sure you really understand this thing, and then yeah, to also maybe again ask my favorite question, but why do you want to solve it? Like, do you really think this thing is valuable? uh, Things like this. I really like having these conversations and engaging with stakeholders, and also mentoring people, and instead of just going there and solving the entire thing myself, like as I would do as a senior previously, I show others how to do that, and this scales a lot better, because I can only work on one thing at a time. But if I have, let's say, three mentees, then by telling how to do this, by showing them, they will not be effective initially, but then eventually, like maybe in 1 year, they will be able to work as like as at the same level as I am now, right? And this is good, because it means I can scale out my skills, and in this way be more effective. So organization becomes like 3 times more effective, instead of just me sitting there and doing stuff. And this is what I like about being an individual contributor. Um, so this kind of high level. So it's still very technical, it's still hands-on. I still do a lot of pair programming with other people. And for a manager, I think it's pretty different. So as a manager needs to think about things like performance reviews, all these things, like what do they also do? Like there are many things like that are people management,
Budgeting,
right?
yeah,
Budgeting, exactly. So
politics,
yeah, well, politics is a different thing. So I think at the
fighting for
level,
resources. Yeah.
yeah, fighting for resources, indeed. So something as a lead I don't need to do. Uh, I do sometimes. I need to convince people that some problems are worth solving, but that's a different thing. Yeah. So for me personally, I still like the technical aspect, and that's why I thought it's a good idea to go that path. But now, actually, when thinking about this, maybe I wouldn't mind going the managerial path as well. But I haven't done this, so I cannot really suggest like how to, like, if you have these two choices, how uh, you can solve it. Maybe a good idea actually is to first have a small team, like maybe just a few junior people, and then sort of try to test it. Like if you really enjoy the people aspect, like the people management aspect of that job, and if after 3 months you find out that yeah, it's not your cup of tea, then you can just safely backtrack and then do something else, instead
Yeah,
of
I think
jumping directly and managing like a team of 5 people.
I think that's a very good strategy, and I think a lot of companies should provide that for their technical contributors because it can be quite overwhelming for people to suddenly become a manager and they realize that there's no U-turn and they burn out and they leave. Instead, give them the option. You're just gonna try being a manager. If you want to stop at any time, you can say you want to stop, and we retain you. I think that's a great idea. So Alexey, I'm your senior manager, and I say, Alexey, I need someone to do all the people management. You'll be hands-on 30% of the time, but you're gonna do all their performance reviews, you're gonna do budgeting, you're gonna attend all these high-level meetings. How would you think about it? How would you decide whether to take that sacrifice of leadership?
I would probably agree. I mean, like it's
a great learning experience.
Yeah, like of course, like I would again think, like, do I have like an exit strategy in case it doesn't go well? Like, what are my options if, let's say, after 6 months I find out this is something I don't want to do? Like, what do I do in this case? Yeah, but most likely I'll say yes. So
I think that's a good point. To have a way to backtrack, to have a way to U-turn, if you, I mean, for people who are first-time managers.
Yes. And I think what helped me, like to become who I am, like to become a lead, is when somebody mentions things like this. Hey, we have this project. Who wants to do it? And usually I say I want to do this. And like many good things happened because of that. And then even if somebody is not asking you directly, then just following up and saying, hey, like I can actually try to do that, try to help you. Yeah, I think that really helps to move beyond a senior role.
That's a great example. I think in one of my previous companies, I used to organize Happy Friday. So it was me and another data engineer. And every now and then, some of the C-suite executives would pop by. And I'll get them drunk and I ask them, what keeps you up at night? What is troubling you? And then they'll say, a quarter from now, we're going to let everyone write customer reviews. And now we're still manually custom. I don't know how we can scale. Bam, that's your problem. Automated product review classifier. And you solve that, you demonstrate initiative. I mean, I like to solve that because it's just an interesting problem. But it's a great way, just like what Alexey mentioned, volunteer for things, even if people don't ask for it. But of course, make sure that you're solving the right problem. Checking with them, get feedback. And I think you touch on something that's very similar. Looking back at your career, what are some of the things that you did? But then after that, you notice that it's a waste of time. Maybe the masters. And what would you not do again if you had to start from scratch? I mean, what advice would you give to people who are starting out?
Yeah, so from my career, I think I really liked my like how I started as a Java developer. I think that gave me really great background for a data scientist. I think because most of the stuff we do as data scientists, it's engineering work, and then knowing how to do this helped me a lot. And then masters was yeah, I don't think it was really necessary. Maybe back then it kind of was, but now it will not be necessary for sure. So just doing courses and then doing projects should be enough for that. Yeah, I look also when I look back at all the decisions I took, I started freelancing in parallel with my studies, and that was super helpful because that gave me a lot of projects, like a good portfolio, and it helped me to have things to talk about, and yeah, so, and a lot of different things, not just one project but many different things. I think that was also quite helpful, and of course freelancing is not for everyone, but let's say if you're studying and if you have some free time, and that's probably a good idea to freelance a bit during your studies.
I think that's a great point. I think what's very difficult for people who just come out of school is they don't have much experience to show
Mhm.
for it. Freelancing, do a lot of internships or apprenticeships is a great way to demonstrate that you are able to do it, and
Exactly.
you learn a lot of things like, I don't know, Jira, project management that
Mhm.
you don't learn in school, and that helps you. So let me ask you this. Similarly, are there skills or steps that you've adopted, and then you immediately think, why didn't I do this earlier? What hack, what data science hacks do you have that you think that everyone should just start doing earlier? I know previously you mentioned something about writing this huge documentation of everything
Mhm.
that, everything you forget. Maybe you want to recap that, or what else you want to share about other tips you have for our data scientists out here.
Yeah, so about that document, yeah, I think when, especially when somebody approaches me, sorry.
No, I'm just gonna say I'm gonna add the link to that question
Ah,
in this, so that you can refer to Alexey's thoughts on this as well. Yeah.
yeah,
So I'll add that.
yeah, that's actually because I was thinking, okay, what I'm going to answer to that question, it's tough. So thanks for helping me. Yeah, so let's say somebody comes to me with a suggestion. So let's say we want to use machine learning for solving that problem. Can you help us? And then starting from that meeting, it's a good idea to capture everything. Like, what is the problem they have? Why do they think machine learning is the right solution? How success looks like. So like, let's say if we integrate machine learning, what happens? And then definitely agree on the next steps during this meeting, and then capture everything in a document. And then every time you follow up on this topic, like you talk to other people, um, basically with everyone on this topic, I try to put it in this document. And then it shows the history, like how it evolved, like how we thought initially it would help. And like as we learn more information about this problem, as we maybe talk to more people, how this problem evolves, what are the new angles we look at this problem, what are the new potential solutions we think about. Like having that helps a lot, like sort of like a project journey in a way. I think I started doing this at OLX. I didn't do this previously. So I think that was, I should have started doing this even like when I was freelancing. And now if I had all these things to look back and think, yeah. And also like speaking of journals, what I really, what I think really helps is like writing a blog post about this. So a journal is an internal thing, right? You cannot share it with others. But a blog post, something like short, maybe just 3 minutes of reading, that and also trying to keep it short, like not more than 10 minutes, really forces you to think like, okay, what did I learn here? What were the important things? So doing that, I think, is super helpful. And I didn't do that enough. Uh, like I think I started doing that all only at OLX also. What I did do, and I try to keep doing, is every time I learn something, I take a note. Sometimes it turns into a blog post, but oftentimes I'm too lazy to edit, and then I can just put a PDF somewhere, share it with somewhere, but still somehow share this knowledge, and then somebody will benefit from this. And also, I think it's even more important for me to have something to go back to, and then if I need to repeat something, I just open this document instead of going to Google and trying to find all these other blog posts. I just follow my document, reproduce all these steps, and then yeah, basically it helps to remember things better.
So it seems like the hack that Alexei have is that he writes a lot. So let me ask you this: you write a lot, and you're awesome, but there are also very awesome people that don't write. They don't write blog posts, they don't write books, but we know that they're really good. So what is it that makes the difference in terms of writing? What's the difference with regard to writing?
Well, I guess maybe if your question is like why they don't write,
Or
why
why
some
why should
people,
why should people write?
yeah. Well, it's difficult to write, right? It takes a lot of time. Like it's really like to make it crisp on paper because all my thoughts, they are super clear in my head, until I try to actually get them out and write. And this process of putting something out of my head to a document, I usually use Google Docs. So putting something from my head to a Google Doc is super difficult. And I know why some people don't write, because it's not an easy thing. And then let's say they spend a couple of days, like a couple of weeks writing about something, and then they ask for comments, and then they get a lot of comments, and they basically get yeah, discouraged, give up.
Yeah.
And yeah, so what I think it really helps to, like, the more you do this, the easier it becomes. Even though I've been writing for quite a while, maybe more than 10 years, still sometimes very difficult for me. I often struggle to actually to write something. And then when I force myself to do this, I understand things better after doing this. And then next time I have to, let's say, have a conversation on a podcast like now, these things are clear in my head because I
Yep.
have written them, and speaking them becomes easier. So it kind of helps to structure the way I think. And I think this is the power of writing. And I think everyone should try to do this just for this, just to be able to express yourself clearly. Like, even if you don't write for a blog post, if you just write for I don't know, like a simple notebook that you keep and
Yep.
nobody sees this notebook, it still helps to structure your thoughts. And I think this is a really good exercise to do. And then the next time, yeah.
And for people who are listening and not familiar with Alexey, when he says that he writes a bit and for 10 years, what he means that he's written 2 books and he's writing another book now. So it's quite different. I mean, don't expect that, you're going to take Alexey's tips and you're going to sound just like him or think just like him. He's been writing a lot, but it's only, he's just saying that it's only writing a bit.
Yeah, it's still difficult. Like, even though like it sounds like 2 books is a lot, but
It's
sometimes
a
I
lot.
kind of, I mean, like it seems it's, yeah, sometimes I feel like, yeah, why it's so difficult? Why, like, just 2 minutes ago when I was thinking about this, it was so clear in my head. Why it doesn't come out like that?
Yeah. I'm just gonna take this down because it's a great soundbite. Okay, I guess then I have one last question for you, Alexey. In data science, in our field, things move so quickly. It's impossible to keep up with everything. How do you decide what to learn? How do you know if it'll be relevant and worth your time? Or do you just follow interests? Or how do you learn? How do you choose what to learn?
Yeah, I remember trying to. I had once a RSS reader. You remember, maybe Google Reader first, and then it was closed, and then I used the old reader. And then once I thought it's a good idea to subscribe to Archive RSS, and then it was basically just impossible to keep up with everything that's
Yeah,
happening on
it's not.
Archive.
It's
It
not.
was like 100 papers, and then now like, it was 5 years ago. I don't even know how many papers are published now on Archive.
It's not.
And,
Yeah.
and then at some point I just understood, but okay, but like, do I really need all this information? Like, what am I going to do with all this? I also had like a folder on Dropbox where I would save all the paper, like all the papers. I called this folder to read, and then at some point it was like half a gig or something like that. I remember that day when I just, okay, I know I'm not going to read that.
Yeah.
That was a good day. Then, yeah, so just realizing that there is no way you can
Yes.
do like, there is no way you can digest all this information. I think helps. But like, how to select, I don't know. I just try to focus on the problem I'm solving, and then whatever works for that problem, I'm trying um, to find and then learn that. And also lately, maybe last 2 3 years, I'm trying to learn things outside of data science, like a bit of marketing, a bit of like, also like how to speak, how to read, like these things that are not necessarily related to data science. And I think I just like them. So whatever I like, I try to learn. And Yeah, so there's no silver bullet for that. So if you like something, you learn until you stop liking it, and then you stop learning it, and then you move on to the other thing you like.
I think Alexei touched on a great point in terms of how to choose what to learn. He uses this approach called just-in-time learning.
Okay.
Essentially,
Yeah.
if he has a problem, he just solves it. He just learns about it, and immediately he can apply it hands-on, and that's how it sticks.
Mm-hmm.
There's no point just reading. I mean, it doesn't. Okay, for some people it will stick. For me, it
For
doesn't.
me.
Yeah. So thank you very much. I mean, that's all the questions I have, Alexei. Is there anything that I should have asked but I didn't?
Yeah, maybe you should have asked me about the data talks community.
Oh, yeah, Alexei is starting this data talks community. I don't know how he does it. Lead data scientist writing a book and now starting a community. Like, why? Why did you start that community, Alexei? How do you see it growing? How will it help people?
Yeah, so there are many reasons. It somehow happened naturally, actually. So I'm writing a book, and then one of the readers asked, "Is there a place where I can talk about this book?" I thought, there's actually no place. How about creating a place for that? And this is how it started, but the community, of course, is not about the book. It's just one channel in Slack, but it's more. I get a lot of questions on LinkedIn, on Twitter, by email, also on Quora. I used to be active on Quora at some point. And yeah, I try to answer these questions, but it doesn't scale. Like I can answer somebody, but that somebody will benefit from my answer, but others will not see the answer. And that was another reason I wanted to start Slack, where people ask questions in public and they receive questions, not necessarily from me, but from other people in the community. And if I inspire them to do this by showing an example, by trying to answer, then maybe more people, it will attract more people who also want to help, and maybe people who I helped will help others. This is how I imagine it, and I want to build the community like that. And also, like I'm doing events, like hosting meetups, and one of the reasons I'm doing that is sometimes I want to talk at a conference, I submit a great proposal, and I'm rejected. And this is very disappointing. And then I thought, okay, but why do I have to submit a proposal?
Yeah.
Can't I just, talk myself? Like, why do I need a conference for doing a presentation? And this is how this idea came to me that yeah, maybe I can just host meetups. And then one of my friends was asking, "Do you know a place where I can give a talk?" I said yes, and then this was that SageMaker talk you attended.
Yeah.
It was the first event we had. Now we had more than 4 or maybe 5. Yeah.
I think Alexei has events once every week,
Uh-huh.
right? I don't know how you keep up with the cadence. I don't know how you find so many speakers, but it's a great time to be part of their talks and just listen to these experts speaking and sharing their experience. What else? Is there anything else? Any other advice you want to give to people wanting to get into the field of data science, or people in data science trying to be more effective? Of course, other than attending data talks, meetups, and of course joining joining your Slack.
Yeah, that's the number one thing to do. But after that, I think I think I told that already, realizing that machine learning is just a tool. Programming is just a tool. Sometimes you can solve a problem even without programming. You can just, sit and classify all these images by hand, and then see if these classifications you did, let's say we want like at OLX, people upload images. OLX is an online classifieds platform where people sell things and buy things. And let's say somebody thinks that image quality is an issue. So there are many bad images. And we want to build a system, a deep learning model, of course, that will tell if an image is good or bad, right? And then if an image is bad, then we want to tell users that, hey, your image is bad, do something about this. But maybe we don't need to spend like half a year building this model, collecting all this data set, and going through all these troubles of deploying it. Maybe a data scientist can just sit and label a couple of hundred images and then send these images to the sellers saying, hey, we identified that your images are not good. Can you do something about them? And then see how customers react. And I think like you don't even need to code. You don't like all you need for that is a couple of hours of your time, patience, and email, right? Emails of these users. And you can already get a lot of insights like how this thing you want to build will help the users. So just keep that in mind all the time and try to find the easiest solution to validate and to build. And yeah.
And that's a great tip, that's a great tip to answer the question that Alexey asked. How do we know people will use this? How will it help people? And if maybe that data scientist realizes that when he emails sellers, everyone ignores it,
Mm-hmm.
or they ask, how can I fix it? That's where you know how your product should evolve, how you should
Exactly.
spec out your product at the start. That's a great tip, Alexey.
Yeah, because they might just not uh, not do anything. They receive, okay, whatever. Like, what can I do? Like, how can I improve the quality of
Yeah,
the picture? And then it's just spam. And then yeah, we wasted 6 months of time, right?
exactly. Yeah. Anyway, that I think that's all we have. Unless you have any more that you want to share, Alexey, I think we can end here. And I will write this up, and we will post this. I'll need to combine the two video clips together and post it on YouTube somehow. But yeah, thank you, Alexey.
Thanks.